You're walking alone down a narrow, empty street. No sound, no shadow, but suddenly the back of your neck goes cold. Your back tightens, and you turn around. No one's there. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. Then you keep walking. But here's what almost nobody realizes. Your brain wasn't wrong. It has never been wrong about that moment. What neuroscience calls the gaze detection system, a mechanism running beneath your conscious awareness, continuously scanning the environment, is sensitive enough to fire before your eyes have seen anything at all. And across countless spiritual traditions, from ancient Egypt to Japan, from Siberian shamans to Indian philosophy, this feeling has never been dismissed as illusion. It has always been treated as real perception. Today, we're going into both of those worlds, science and spirit. And by the end of this video, there's something I'm going to reveal about the feeling of being watched that will completely change how you understand the boundary between yourself and everything around you. I'm saving it for last, and honestly, it's not just science, it's something much deeper than that. Have you ever been sitting in a crowded cafe, eyes on your phone, and then suddenly looked up, and at that exact moment, locked eyes with a stranger who had been staring straight at you? Be honest, almost everyone has experienced that, and most people call it coincidence or just ordinary social instinct. But here's what's actually happening inside your brain. In 2013, a study at the University of Sydney published in Current Biology found that the human brain has a dedicated neural circuit for processing information about other people's gaze, and this circuit operates completely independently from the conscious visual system. Meaning, you don't need to see someone to feel that they're watching you. That information is processed at a deeper layer before your conscious mind has a chance to intervene. The brain region responsible for this is called the superior temporal sulcus. It's one of the most evolutionarily ancient structures in the primate brain, and its sole function is to detect one thing. Is there a living creature directing its attention toward me right now? From an evolutionary perspective, the answer to that question for hundreds of thousands of years usually meant a predator was nearby. The individuals who couldn't sense that gaze didn't become anyone's ancestors. Only the ones who survived passed this sensitivity down. And the fact that you're here today is proof that system worked across hundreds of thousands of generations. What that means is, every time the back of your neck goes cold and you turn around, you're not being paranoid. You're using one of the most sophisticated survival tools evolution has ever produced. And there's something I haven't mentioned yet, the strangest experiment science has ever conducted on this ability. I'm saving it for the end because it doesn't just concern the brain. It touches on the question of whether your consciousness can reach another person without any physical contact at all. The back of your neck goes cold. The hair on your arms stands up. Your heart beats faster. You know that feeling. But have you ever actually wondered, why the neck? Why not your fingertips, or your ears, or your stomach? Most people explain this as a simple fear response. Your body gets stressed, your neck goes cold. That's it. But neuroanatomy reveals something entirely different. And once you understand it, you'll never dismiss that feeling again. The back of the neck and the rear of the throat contain the highest concentration of mechanoreceptors in the human body, sensory receptors that pick up microscopic changes in air pressure, vibration, and minute temperature shifts in the surrounding environment. When a creature approaches from behind, even before it's close enough for you to hear footsteps, the tiny disturbances in airflow are enough to trigger these receptors. Simultaneously, the sympathetic nervous system releases adrenaline and norepinephrine. Blood vessels beneath the skin of the neck constrict, producing the sudden cold sensation. The erector pili muscles contract, causing the hair on your arms to stand on end. All of this happens in under half a second, before you can form a single conscious thought. A 2019 study at the University of Vienna, published in Psychophysiology, measured the galvanic skin response of participants while they were secretly observed from behind via camera. The result? Their electrodermal activity increased significantly, even when participants had no conscious awareness that they were being watched at all. The body responds before the mind recognizes anything. From your nervous system's point of view, the back of your neck is not your weak point. It is your forward radar station, positioned at the exact blind spot of your vision, where danger approaches first, and equipped to sense what your eyes cannot see. Every time your neck reacts, your body isn't panicking. That's your most sophisticated protection system doing exactly what it was designed to do. If this is landing for you, like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to reach more people who need to hear this. Here's what's striking. While modern science spent decades proving this with measurement instruments, spiritual traditions across the world had been describing it for thousands of years, in completely different languages, but with the same essential meaning. Most of us assume those descriptions are metaphor, symbol, myth. But look a little more carefully. In ancient Egyptian tradition, the concept of the divine gaze wasn't simply a symbol of light. The Egyptians believed that the eye didn't merely receive information, it also emitted energy, capable of reaching out and touching whatever it looked upon. The symbol of the Eye of Horus, the Wedjat, was worn as protective amulet, not to watch enemies, but to sense when enemies were watching you. This was a spiritual defense system, encoded into jewelry, worn by people who understood that the boundary between inside and outside is far more permeable than flesh and bone suggest. In Indian philosophy, the concept of drishti, usually translated as gaze, is understood as a directional flow of energy. When you look at someone with high intensity of attention, you are directing prana, vital force, toward them. The yoga tradition describes that someone who has developed pratyahara, the ability to withdraw the senses inward, can feel another person's drishti as a real physical pressure on the skin. Not metaphor, a felt, bodily experience described with remarkable technical precision thousands of years before anyone had instruments to measure electrodermal response. In Japanese Shinto, ki, equivalent to India's prana and China's chi, is described as capable of traveling through space in the direction of conscious attention. Aikido practitioners are trained to sense an opponent's ki before the opponent moves, not with the eyes, but through the skin and spine. The legend of samurai who could feel a blade approaching from behind wasn't exaggeration. It was a description of a systematically trained skill built on heightening the sensitivity of the very same peripheral mechanoreceptors that neuroscience confirmed in Part 2. And in Siberian shamanic tradition, there is a belief that a person's spirit can travel ahead of the body, that when you approach someone with strong intention, your presence arrives first, and the other person feels it before they see you. Not superstition. This is a description of a phenomenon reported by hundreds of thousands of people across every culture in human history, and they all describe it the same way. From the perspective of all these traditions, the feeling of being watched from behind is not a glitch in the brain. It is evidence that you possess a form of perception that extends beyond ordinary physical boundaries, a capacity that many of us have quietly lost. Not because it disappeared, but because we stopped believing in it. You might think science and spirituality are two parallel lines that never meet, but there is a series of experiments that has made many scientists stop and ask a genuine question. Does that boundary actually exist? In 1993, psychologist Rupert Sheldrake, PhD in biology from Cambridge, began systematically documenting reports of what he called the sense of being stared at. He designed a simple experiment. Participants sat with their backs turned, and an observer was randomly assigned to either look or not look at them. Participants had to guess, am I being watched right now? After more than 15,000 trials, the hit rate was approximately 55%, significantly above the 50% that chance would predict. Not large, but consistent and reproducible. Sheldrake faced fierce criticism from mainstream academia, but the telling detail was this: His critics, when they ran the experiment themselves under equivalent conditions, could not replicate the failure. The results still came in above chance. In 2015, a study at the University of Osnabrück in Germany, published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease, used physiological measurement instruments combined with hidden cameras and more rigorous controls. The result? The heart rate and electrodermal activity of people being observed shifted with statistical significance, even under conditions of complete silence and physical separation. That raises a question that neuroscience still cannot cleanly answer. Can consciousness, or at least directed, intentional attention, produce a measurable effect on another person, across space, without any conventional physical signal? This is not mysticism. This is an open question in science, and from the perspective of both quantum physics and neuroscience, the answer is increasingly leaning in one direction. Consciousness is not simply a passive output of the brain. It may be a field, something that extends beyond the boundary of your skull. And if that's true, the feeling of being watched from behind is not your brain inventing something. It is your receiver picking up a real signal. There is one version of the feeling of being watched that we talk about far less, and it's the strangest of all. Have you ever been completely alone? No one in the house, no one nearby, and still felt a presence in the room with you? Most people call this paranoia or joke about ghosts. But neuroscience has a different explanation, and it's stranger than any ghost story. Research by Olaf Blanke at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne in Switzerland, published in Current Biology in 2014, identified the neural mechanism behind this phenomenon. When there is a mismatch between motor signals, what my body is doing, and sensory signals, where I feel sensation coming from in space, the brain generates what researchers call a presence hallucination. Your brain, in its effort to reconcile conflicting streams of information about your body's position in space, inadvertently creates a ghost copy of your own body and places it somewhere behind you, then perceives it as a separate entity. This phenomenon appears most frequently in mountaineers, solo sailors, and pilots, people in states of extreme exhaustion and sensory isolation. Ernest Shackleton, the legendary Antarctic explorer, wrote in his journals that during a life-or-death crossing of frozen terrain, he continuously felt the presence of a fourth member alongside the group when there were only 3 of them. But here is the point where both science and spiritual tradition arrive at the same unanswered question. If the brain generates a presence to fill a sensory void, what does that say about the nature of presence itself? Is "someone is here" something that only exists when the brain confirms it? Or is the brain detecting something that was already there, something that only becomes perceptible under the right conditions? The Japanese have a concept called ma, the gap between things that exist. Not absence, but potential space, the container for what has not yet manifested. In Buddhist meditation tradition, shunyata, emptiness, does not mean physical void. It is pure potential, the ground from which all phenomena arise. When you sense a presence in an empty room, you may not be hallucinating. You may be brushing up against a deeper layer of reality, one that the ordinary brain has learned to filter out so you can function efficiently in daily life. But sometimes, in moments of quiet or exhaustion or solitude, that filter thins, and you feel what has always been there, what you were simply never taught to recognize. Remember at the beginning when I said there was a strange experiment, one that didn't just concern the brain, but touched the question of whether your consciousness can reach another person without physical contact? Here it is. In 2004, Dean Radin at the Noetic Sciences Institute in California conducted an experiment using EEG equipment. Person A sat in a soundproofed room connected to an EEG. Person B was in a separate room, completely isolated, and was instructed to direct strong, focused attention toward person A at randomly assigned intervals. Person A had no way of knowing when person B was watching. The result? Person A's brainwaves shifted with statistical significance during precisely those intervals when person B was concentrating, with no physical signal of any kind exchanged between the two rooms. A small effect, but consistent across many trials. This experiment remains contested. Some researchers dispute the methodology, others cannot explain the results, but no one has proven that nothing happened. And here is what I want you to really sit with. If your attention can leave a measurable trace on another person's brain, then every time you feel someone watching you, you're not just picking up a signal from your environment, you are picking up a signal from another person's mind. And that changes everything about how we understand the boundary of the self. If I can sense your consciousness turning toward me, then I do not end at my skin. I extend outward to the point where another person's attention can reach. That is not a metaphor. That may be the most accurate description of what a human being actually is. The next time the back of your neck goes cold and you turn around whether anyone is there or not, remember this. No body exists entirely within itself. You are a transmitter and a receiver both, and you always have been, long before you had language to say so.